The sky turned black on the day the Keth arrived. Not the gentle black of night that the Valori had loved for thousands of years. This was a hungry black, a living black. Millions of ships blocked the twin suns, and the beautiful crystal cities of Valora Prime fell into cold shadow. Elder Counselor Tamari stood on the balcony of the high tower and watched the end of her world begin. She was old, even by Valori standards. Her crystalline body had grown cloudy with age, and her light dimmed with each passing year. She had lived through peaceful times. She had never seen war. None of her people had. The Valori were beings of crystal and light. They grew from the living rock of their world, and when they died, they returned to it. They had no weapons. They had no soldiers. For 10,000 years, they had built a civilization of art, music, and gentle trade with the stars. They believed the galaxy was kind. They were wrong. "How long do we have?" Tamari asked the young one beside her. Nari was an archivist. Her job was to record history, not to make it. But history was being made all around her now, and she could not look away. Her crystal form was still clear and bright, untouched by age. She held a recording device in her thin fingers and captured everything she saw. "The Keth will reach the surface in 6 hours," Nari said. Her voice did not shake. She had already accepted what was coming. "They will consume the northern continent first. The southern regions will fall within 3 days." Tamari closed her eyes. 4 billion souls lived on this world. 4 billion Valori who had never known violence, who had never needed to fight, who had never imagined that something so terrible could exist in the universe. The Keth swarm was a nightmare that traveled between stars. They were not a civilization. They did not build or create or dream. They were hunger given form. They landed on worlds, consumed everything organic and inorganic, and then moved on to the next. No species had ever stopped them. No weapon had ever slowed them. When the Keth chose a world, that world died. "We sent messages to the Galactic Compact," Tamari said. "We begged for help. We offered everything we had." "They refused," Nari replied. "They said our system has no strategic value. They said they cannot risk their fleets for a species that cannot fight." Tamari opened her eyes. There was no anger in her. The Valori had bred anger out of themselves long ago. There was only sadness, deep and endless, like an ocean with no shore. "Then we will die alone," she said. But Nari shook her head. "There is one more option, the ancient beacon." The beacon was a relic from another age. 2,000 years ago, when the Valori first joined the galactic community, they received a gift from the Compact. It was a distress signal, designed to call for help across the stars. Any species that heard it was bound by old laws to respond. Tamari had forgotten it existed. "The beacon is forbidden. The Compact warned us never to use it." "Why?" "Because we do not know who will answer." Nari looked at the sky. The Keth ships were closer now. She could see their shapes against the fading light. They were ugly things built from the bones of dead worlds. In 6 hours, they would begin their work. Her people would scream, and the galaxy would do nothing. "Does it matter?" Nari asked. "We are already dead. Whatever answers cannot be worse than what is coming." Tamari thought about this for a long moment. The Compact had told them stories about the beacon. They said it was connected to old relay stations scattered across the galaxy. They said one of those stations was near a quarantine system, a system that housed a species so dangerous that the entire galaxy had agreed to leave them alone. The humans. Tamari had read about them in ancient texts. 300 years ago, humanity discovered faster than light travel. They burst onto the galactic stage with fire in their eyes and blood on their hands. They had just finished a terrible war among themselves, a war that killed billions of their own kind. And when they looked at the stars, the galaxy saw what they truly were. Monsters, not conquerors. The galaxy had seen conquerors before, not destroyers. The galaxy had seen those too. Humans were something else entirely. They were survivors. Their history was a long chain of disasters that should have ended them. Ice ages, plagues, wars, famines. They died by the millions, by the billions, and they kept coming back. Each time they fell, they rose again, stronger than before. The Compact offered them a deal. "Stay in your solar system, and we will leave you alone." The humans accepted. They had been silent ever since. "If we use the beacon," Tamari said slowly, "we might summon the humans." Nari turned to face her. "The humans are monsters. Everyone says so." "Yes, they might be worse than the Keth. Perhaps. They might come here and destroy us themselves." Tamari nodded. "All of this is true, but consider this, young one. The Keth will kill us slowly. They will eat our world piece by piece. Our children will watch their parents die. Our elders will watch everything they built turn to dust. It will take 3 days for them to finish, and every moment of those 3 days will be filled with suffering." She turned to look at Nari directly. "If the humans come, if they truly are monsters, then perhaps they will simply kill us quickly. And if they do not come at all, we are no worse than before." Nari understood. It was not hope that drove this decision. It was desperation. They were choosing between certain death and uncertain death, between a slow end and whatever the humans might bring. "I will activate the beacon," Nari said. She walked through the crystal halls of the high tower, past murals that showed 10,000 years of peaceful history. She passed the Chamber of Songs, where Valori musicians had created melodies that made other species weep with joy. She passed the Garden of Memories, where the crystallized remains of beloved ancestors stood in eternal rest. All of this would be gone soon. The Keth would consume it all. The beacon was in the deepest part of the tower. It was a small thing, no larger than Nari's hand. She did not know how it worked. She only knew that it would send a signal across the stars, a cry for help that could not be ignored. She activated it. The signal burst outward at speeds faster than light. It bounced from relay station to relay station, crossing thousands of light years in moments. It passed through the territory of a dozen species, none of whom responded. It reached the edge of the compact space and kept going. And then it reached a small, unremarkable planet orbiting a yellow star. A planet called Earth, a world marked on every star chart with a single warning: do not wake them. In a command center buried deep beneath a mountain, a young officer named Hiok heard the signal. He played it 3 times to make sure he understood. Then he picked up a communication device and called his commander. "Sir," he said, "someone is crying for help." On the other end of the line, Captain Jahi listened to the recording. 4 billion lives, a peaceful species with no weapons, a swarm that would consume them all. "How far?" she asked. 3 weeks at maximum speed." "Sir, the compact has this sector marked as non-essential. They will not respond." Jihye was silent for a long moment. 300 years of quarantine. 300 years of being called monsters, demons, the galaxy's mistake. 300 years of watching other species suffer while humanity sat in their cage. "Wake the fleet," she said. "We are going." Admiral Yuna had not slept in 36 hours. She stood in the command center of the Galactic Compact's central fleet, surrounded by holographic displays that showed the movements of 10,000 ships. Her species, the Talori, were known for their calm minds and steady hands. But even she felt fear crawling up her spine when she received the report. "Say that again," she said to the officer in front of her. Navigator Dohun was young, barely out of training. His 4 eyes blinked rapidly as he read the data for the 3rd time. "The Valori distress beacon activated 12 hours ago. The signal reached Sol Relay Station 7, and something answered." "That is impossible. Sol's system has been dark for 300 years. "I know, Admiral, but the response is genuine. They are using old compact communication codes, the ones we gave them before the quarantine." Yuna walked to the main display and pulled up the Sol system. It sat at the edge of the spiral arm, far from the busy trade routes and political centers of the galaxy. A single yellow star. 8 planets. One of them was Earth. She had studied Earth in her youth. Every military officer in the compact did. It was required learning, like studying a dangerous animal before entering its territory. Earth was a death world. Its gravity was crushing. Its atmosphere was corrosive. Its weather systems could kill in minutes. And yet somehow life had evolved there. Not gentle life, not peaceful life. Life that fought and bled and died and kept fighting anyway. The humans were the product of 4 billion years of violence, Their bodies were built for endurance, for pain, for survival at any cost. They could break their own bones and keep moving. They could lose limbs and survive. They had chemicals in their blood that let them ignore injuries that would kill other species instantly. And their minds were even more terrifying than their bodies. "Play the transmission," Yuna ordered. Do-hun pressed a button, and a voice filled the room. It was rough and direct, with none of the formal patterns that other species used in official communications. "This is the Terran vessel Cheongja. We received a distress signal from the Valori homeworld. We understand the Keth swarm is attacking their planet. We are coming to help. Estimated arrival in 19 days. Tell whoever is in charge to hold on." The transmission ended. The command center was silent. "They broke quarantine," said Senator Halvax. He was a politician, not a soldier. He had come to the command center to observe, but now his pale face was tight with fear. "This is exactly what we warned about. The humans cannot be controlled." "They answered a distress call," Yuna replied, "one that we ignored. The Valori system has no strategic value. We made the correct decision." Yuna turned to face him. 4 billion people are dying while we debate politics. The humans decided to do something about it. What does that say about us?" Halvax had no answer. The truth was complicated. 300 years ago, when humanity first appeared on the galactic stage, the Compact had no idea what to do with them. They were not like other species. They did not fit into categories. Most intelligent species in the galaxy had evolved under gentle conditions, stable climates, abundant resources, peaceful environments. They learned to cooperate because cooperation was efficient. They developed advanced technology because they had time and safety to do so. Humans were different. They came from a world that tried to kill them constantly. They evolved not in peace but in war. Their history was an endless chain of conflict, disaster, and death. They fought their environment. They fought other predators. They fought each other. And through all of it, they kept winning. When they finally developed space travel, they brought their nature with them. Their first contact with another species ended in violence. Not because the humans intended it, but because they reacted to a perceived threat faster than anyone expected. Their reflexes were too quick. Their instincts were too sharp. They saw danger, and they responded before their minds could catch up. After several incidents, the Compact made a decision. Humanity was too dangerous to integrate into galactic society, but they were also too dangerous to fight. So they offered a deal. "Stay in your system, and we will leave you alone." The humans accepted. They pulled back to Earth and its colonies in the Sol system. They built their civilization in isolation, watched by satellites and probes that reported their every move. For 300 years, they were quiet, until now. "We cannot allow this," Halvax said. "If the humans leave quarantine and survive, others will see that our warnings were empty. They will lose fear of us." Yuna shook her head. "You misunderstand. The Keth swarm has destroyed 47 civilizations. No fleet in the galaxy has ever defeated them in open combat. The humans are flying into certain death." "Then let them die. It solves our problem." "Does it?" Yuna pulled up another display. 12 ships. They are sending 12 ships against the Keth. Do you know how many ships the Compact sent against the swarm at the Battle of Hollow 7? 3,000. We lost every single one. Do-hun stepped forward. "Admiral, we are receiving reports from long-range sensors. The human fleet has passed the quarantine boundary. They are accelerating toward Valori space." "Their ship designs," Yuna said quietly. "Show me." The display shifted to show the human vessels. They were ugly. There was no other word for them. Where other species built ships with elegant curves and smooth lines, the humans built boxes. Angular, brutal shapes covered in heavy armor. The surfaces were scarred and damaged, repaired with patches of different metals. These were not display pieces. These were weapons that had been used, broken, and rebuilt again and again. "Those ships have seen combat," Do-hun observed. "Against what?" Halvax demanded. "They have been alone for 3 centuries. Who have they been fighting?" Yuna studied the images. She noticed details that the others missed. The armor patterns, the weapon placements, the way the ships moved in formation, then broke apart, then reformed in different patterns. "Each other," she said finally. They have been fighting each other. They never stopped. The others stared at her in horror. Their species divided into factions during quarantine. They fought wars, small wars, limited wars, but real combat between real soldiers with real weapons. They never had peace. Yuna let out a long breath. While we have been sitting in our comfortable stations, debating politics, the humans have been training for 300 years. Then they are mad, Halvax said. They are insane. No rational species would fight itself for entertainment. Yuna thought about the records she had read. Human history, human wars, human atrocities, but also human heroes, human sacrifices, humans who threw themselves on explosives to save strangers, humans who starved so that others could eat, humans who walked into certain death because someone needed help. They are not rational, she agreed. They never have been, and that is what makes them terrifying. She turned back to the display, watching the human fleet move toward the Valori system. 12 ships against a swarm that had destroyed 47 civilizations. May whatever gods they believe in have mercy on them, she said, because the Keth will not. Far across the galaxy, aboard the Cheongja, Captain Jihye watched the same stars that Yuna watched. She knew the odds. She knew what awaited them. Her crew knew too, and they had volunteered anyway. Captain, said Tactical Officer Taiho from his station, we are receiving a message from Compact Command. They are ordering us to turn back. Jihi did not even look at the transmission. Delete it. Sir, they are threatening consequences if we continue. What will they do? Quarantine us. Jihi smiled. But there was no humor in it. We have lived in a cage for 300 years. We followed their rules. We stayed quiet. We let the galaxy call us monsters. And now, somewhere out there, 4 billion people are screaming for help that will never come. She stood and faced her bridge crew. They were young and old, men and women, all of them wearing the same expression of grim determination. We cannot save everyone, Jihye said. We will probably die trying, but we can choose what kind of monsters we are. We can choose to answer when someone cries for help. She sat back down in her command chair. Maximum speed to Valori Prime. Nari had stopped counting the dead after the first week. The Keth swarm had landed on the northern continent and began their work with mechanical efficiency. They did not torture. They did not cause pain for pleasure. They simply consumed. Cities fell silent one by one. The crystalline structures that had stood for thousands of years crumbled to dust and were absorbed into the swarm. The Valori had nowhere to run. Their ships were cargo vessels, not warships. They could carry a few thousand refugees at most, and the Keth controlled the space above their world. Any ship that tried to leave was destroyed within minutes. So they hid. They gathered in underground shelters and ancient caverns. They held their children close and waited for death. 4 billion souls slowly being reduced to nothing. Nari stayed at her post in the high tower. Elder Tamari had died 3 days ago, her crystalline body shattered when the Keth destroyed the nearby district. Nari had recorded it all. She felt like she owed it to her people to witness their end, even if no one would ever see the recordings. The beacon had sent its signal. Nothing had answered, or so she believed. On the 19th day, she saw something in the sky. At first, she thought it was more Keth ships. The swarm had darkened the heavens so completely that she had forgotten what open sky looked like. But these new shapes were different. They moved differently. They came from the wrong direction. Then the explosion started. The Keth fleet above Valora Prime was massive. Thousands of ships, ranging from small fighter craft to massive carriers the size of mountains. They had faced no resistance since arriving. The Valori had nothing that could threaten them. The human fleet was 12 ships. It should have been a joke. It should have been suicide. The Keth outnumbered them by hundreds to one. But as Nari watched from her tower, she saw something she could not understand. The Keth were dying. The human ships did not fight like anything she had ever seen in her studies. Other species fought in formations. They maintained lines and patterns, communicating through complex battle computers, moving as organized units. It was efficient. It was logical. The humans fought like wild animals. Their ships scattered the moment they engaged. They broke into individual units, each one attacking a different target. They spun and twisted through the Keth formation, firing weapons in all directions. When one ship drew attention, another would attack from behind. When the Keth tried to surround them, they would suddenly regroup in a different location and strike again. It was chaos. Beautiful, terrifying chaos. Aboard the Cheongja, Captain Jihye stood at the center of her bridge, shouting orders that barely kept up with the battle. Alarms screamed, lights flickered, the ship shook with every impact. But she did not stop. Tai-ho! Target that carrier's engine section. Minseo, bring us around to bearing 77. Hyuk, where is that fighter squadron? Her crew responded instantly. They had trained for this their entire lives. Every human soldier, every pilot, every captain knew that one day they might face a battle like this. They had practiced in simulations, in war games, in the small conflicts that burned through human space during the quarantine years. This was what they were made for. Captain, Tai-ho called out, enemy carrier is breaking apart, but we have 3 cruisers closing on the Daehan. Jihye looked at her tactical display. The Daehan was one of their smaller ships, commanded by a young officer named Sora. She had only 40 crew members. Against 3 Keth cruisers, she had no chance. Tell Sora to hold position, Jihye ordered. We are coming. The Cheongja turned hard, its engines screaming in protest. The ship was old, built before the quarantine. Its hull was covered in patches and repairs from 100 battles. But its heart still beat strong, and its weapons still fired true. They reached the Daehan just as the first Keth cruiser was preparing to fire. Jihye did not hesitate. Ram them! The bridge crew did not question the order. The Cheongja accelerated directly toward the Keth cruiser, firing every weapon it had. The alien ship tried to turn away, but it was too slow. The human vessel struck it at full speed, crushing through its hull like a fist through glass. The impact threw everyone on the bridge to the floor. Systems failed. Fires started. The ship screamed like a wounded animal. But when Jihye pulled herself back to her feet, she saw that the Keth cruiser was destroyed. Damage report. Forward section is gone, Tai-ho said. His face was bleeding, but his voice was steady. Weapon systems at 40%, engines at 60. We lost 12 crew members in the impact. 12 people. 12 names that Jihye would have to remember. 12 families that would receive letters telling them that their loved ones died far from home. Can we still fight? She asked. Yes, Captain. Then we keep fighting. On the surface of Valora Prime, the Valori watched in disbelief. The sky that had been dark with Keth ships was now bright with explosions. Pieces of destroyed vessels rained down like metal snow. And through it all, the human ships kept moving, kept fighting, kept dying, and taking their enemies with them. Nari recorded everything. Her hands were shaking so badly that she could barely hold her device. But she forced herself to continue. This was history. Whatever happened next, the galaxy needed to see this. She heard a sound behind her and turned. A Keth ground soldier had found her tower. It was a horrible thing. All black metal and organic tissue fused together into a shape that hurt to look at. It moved toward her with the slow confidence of a predator that knew its prey could not escape. Nari closed her eyes. She had accepted death many times over the past 19 days. This was simply the end of her waiting. The explosion made her open her eyes again. The Keth soldier was gone. In its place stood a human, a female dressed in heavy armor, covered in dirt and blood. She held a weapon that smoked from recent use. Her face was hard, her eyes cold. You the one sending recordings? The human asked. Her voice was rough, like stones grinding together. Nari could not speak. She nodded. Good. Keep recording. The human looked around the tower, checking for more threats. My name is Sergeant Yunji. We are here to help. You came, Nari finally managed to say. You actually came. Yunji looked at her with an expression that Nari could not read. Humans had such strange faces, full of movements and muscles that conveyed meanings she did not understand. Someone was crying for help, Yunji said simply. We could not ignore it. Outside, more humans were arriving. Shuttles dropped from the burning sky, releasing soldiers who spread across the destroyed city. They moved with purpose, searching for survivors, engaging Keth ground forces wherever they found them. Nari watched as a human soldier picked up a wounded Valori child and carried her toward a medical shuttle. She watched as another human threw himself in front of a Keth attack to protect a group of elderly Valori. She watched as again and again these supposed monsters risked their lives for complete strangers. "I do not understand," she said. "We are nothing to you. We cannot repay you. Why would you come here to die for us?" Yunji finished checking the tower and turned to face her. For a moment, something soft passed across her hard features. Something that looked almost like sadness. 300 years ago, the galaxy called us monsters, Yunji said. They locked us away because they were afraid of what we are. And maybe they were right. Maybe we are monsters. She looked out at the battle still raging in the sky. But we decided a long time ago what kind of monsters we would be. The kind that comes when someone cries for help. The kind that fights for people who cannot fight for themselves. She raised her weapon and moved toward the exit. "Stay here, keep recording. The galaxy needs to see what happens next." The ground war was worse than the battle in space. Sergeant Yunji had seen combat before. During her 15 years of service, she had fought in 3 border conflicts between human factions. She had killed enemies and watched friends die. She thought she understood war. She was wrong. The Keth were not like any enemy she had faced. They did not retreat. They did not surrender. They did not show fear or hesitation. They simply kept coming, wave after wave, an endless tide of metal and flesh that cared nothing for its own losses. Her squad had started with 20 soldiers. After 3 days of fighting, she had 8 left. "Move! Get those civilians to the transport!" Yunji shouted over the constant sound of weapons fire. Private Hayek ran past her, carrying a Valori child in each arm. The crystalline beings were fragile compared to humans. Their bodies could shatter from impacts that would merely bruise human skin. Every moment of combat put them at risk. They had found a group of survivors hiding in an underground shelter beneath what had once been a school. 300 Valori, mostly children and elderly. The adults had died defending them. "Sergeant," called Corporal Minjay from the perimeter. "More Keth incoming from the east. At least 50. Yunji checked her ammunition. She had enough for maybe 10 minutes of sustained fire. Her armor was damaged. Her body ached from a dozen wounds that she had ignored because there was no time to treat them. "Fall back to secondary position. We hold until the last civilian is loaded." Her soldiers obeyed without question. They took up positions behind rubble and broken walls, creating a defensive line between the Keth and the transport shuttle. The alien soldiers appeared moments later, their unnatural bodies moving with terrible speed. The humans opened fire. In another place, at another time, the Valori would have seen this as proof that humans were indeed monsters. The violence was overwhelming. Yunji and her squad killed without mercy, without hesitation, without any of the gentle thoughts that the Valori prized so highly. But the Valori in the shelter saw something else. They saw humans standing between them and death. They saw soldiers who could have retreated, who could have saved themselves, choosing instead to fight and die for strangers. Hyuk was the youngest member of the squad. He had just turned 20 years old when the distress signal came. He had volunteered for the mission because he believed it was right, not because he wanted glory or rewards. He stood at the entrance of the transport, helping Valori board. Many of them were injured. Their crystalline bodies showed cracks and damage that Hyuk did not know how to treat, but he did what he could, speaking softly to calm their fear. A young Valori child stood frozen with terror. Her mother had died in the shelter, and she had no one left. She stared at Hyuk with eyes that did not understand why everything she knew had been destroyed. Hyuk knelt down to her level. He removed his helmet so she could see his face. He tried to smile, though he knew his expression must look strange to her. "Hey," he said gently, "I know you are scared. I am scared too. But I promise you, we are going to get you somewhere safe. Can you trust me?" The child did not understand his words. The translation device could only do so much. But she understood his tone. She understood that this strange creature, this monster from the forbidden world, was trying to help her. She reached out and took his hand. Hyuk lifted her carefully and carried her onto the transport. Behind him, the sounds of battle grew louder. Eunji's squad was being pushed back. "Sergeant, transport is full!" Hyuk called out. Then get it out of here, Yunji responded. We will hold them. Yak looked at the soldiers still fighting. They were his friends, his family. They had trained together, eaten together, laughed together, and now they were going to die so that a shuttle full of strangers could escape. Sir, I can stay and help. You have civilians to protect, Private. That is your mission now. Get them to the base camp. That is an order. Hyuk wanted to argue. Every part of him wanted to stay and fight beside his squad, but he looked at the Valori child still holding his hand, and he understood. The mission was not about glory or honor. It was about saving lives. Yes, Sergeant. The transport lifted off as Yunji's squad made their final stand. Hyuk watched through the window as the 8 remaining soldiers fought against 50 Keth. They were overwhelmed within minutes, but they bought enough time. The transport escaped. In the base camp, the Human Medical Corps worked without rest. They had established a field hospital in a valley protected by mountain walls, treating both human and Valori wounded. The work was difficult. They had never treated crystalline beings before. Their medical knowledge was useless, so they improvised, adapted, learned as they went. Dr. G had been a surgeon in the human military for 20 years. She had never expected to spend her career treating aliens. But as she carefully repaired the cracks in a Valori elder's body, she found that it did not matter. Pain was pain. Fear was fear. The desire to live was universal. Will I survive? The elder asked through the translation device. Yes, Gia said firmly. Your body is different from ours, but healing is healing. You will survive. The elder watched her work with ancient eyes. Why do you help us? Your people call us weak. Your history shows that you conquer the weak. Gia paused. It was a fair question. Human history was indeed filled with conquest and cruelty. Her own ancestors had suffered under oppression. They had also caused oppression. Humanity's past was complicated and often dark. Because we have been the weak ones too, Gia said finally. Long ago, before we reached the stars, my people were conquered. We were enslaved. We were told we were worthless. But others stood up for us. Strangers who had no reason to help, who risked everything because they believed it was right. She returned to her work. We survived because of their kindness. Now it is our turn to be kind. The elder was silent for a long moment. The galaxy says humans are monsters. We are, Gia agreed, but we choose what kind of monsters we become. Outside the hospital, Hyuk sat with the Valori child he had saved. She had not let go of his hand since they arrived. He did not know her name. He did not know if she had any family left, but he stayed with her because she needed someone to stay. He pulled out a small device from his pocket. It was a simple thing, a game that human children played. Shapes and colors moving on a screen. He showed it to the Valori child. She was fascinated. Her crystalline fingers touched the screen, making the shapes move. For the first time since her world ended, she made a sound that might have been laughter. Hyuk smiled. In the middle of a war, surrounded by death, this tiny moment of joy felt like a victory greater than any battle. I do not know if you can understand me, he said softly, but I want you to know something. We came a long way to find you. We left our home, broke our laws, flew into a fight we could not win, and I would do it all again. He looked up at the sky, where human ships still fought against the Keth swarm. Because you matter. You all matter. And no one should ever have to cry for help alone. The Galactic Compact's council chamber had been silent for 3 hours. Delegates from 100 species sat in their designated seats, watching holographic displays that showed images they could not believe. Reports streamed in from long-range sensors, from spy satellites, from the few compact observers brave enough to approach the Valori system. The humans were winning. Admiral Yuna stood at the center of the chamber, presenting data that challenged everything the galaxy thought it knew about warfare. Behind her, images played in endless loops. Human ships ramming Keth carriers. Human soldiers charging into superior numbers. Human medics treating wounded aliens with the same care they showed their own kind. This is impossible, said Senator Halvax. His voice was hollow, all his earlier confidence destroyed by what he was seeing. The Keth have consumed 47 civilizations. No force has ever defeated them. The humans are not defeating them through superior numbers or technology, Yuna replied. Their ships are outdated, Their weapons are crude by our standards. They are winning because they refuse to lose. She pulled up a detailed analysis of human combat tactics. The council watched in horrified fascination. Human soldiers operate under something they call acceptable loss ratios. In most species, including our own, a unit will retreat if it loses more than 30% of its members. Humans consider losses up to 70% acceptable if the mission is completed. Yuna let that sink in. They will keep fighting long after any rational species would surrender. That is not courage, another delegate said. That is madness. Perhaps, but it is effective madness. The images shifted to show Captain Jahye's flagship, the Cheongja. The ship had been reduced to half its original size. Its engines were failing. Its weapon systems were damaged beyond repair. But it was still fighting. Captain Jihe has been commanding from a bridge that no longer has life support, Yuna said. She and her crew are wearing emergency suits, breathing recycled air, refusing to abandon ship while a single weapon still functions. A voice came through the chamber's communication system. It was a recording from 2 hours ago, intercepted by compact sensors. This is the Cheongja to all Terran vessels. We are down to 4 operational ships, the Daehan, Hanul, Biol, and ourselves. Ammunition is at 12%. Fuel reserves critical. There was a pause filled with static and alarms. The civilian evacuation is 60% complete. We hold until it reaches 100. No retreat, no surrender. We came here to save people, and that is what we are going to do. The recording ended. The council chamber remained silent. Yuna looked around at the faces of the delegates. Some showed fear. Some showed shame. A few showed something that might have been admiration. For 300 years, she said quietly, we told ourselves that quarantining humanity was the right decision. We said they were too dangerous, too violent, too unpredictable to be trusted. We called them monsters and locked them away. She gestured at the images still playing behind her. Look at these monsters. Look at what they do when someone cries for help. They break every law we created to contain them. They fly into certain death without hesitation. They give their lives for strangers who cannot repay them, who cannot even understand why they came. She turned to face Senator Halvax directly. What did we do when the Valori asked for help? We calculated the strategic value of their system. We determined that saving them was not worth the cost. We let 4 billion people die because it was the efficient choice. Her voice hardened. And then we wonder why the galaxy fears us instead of trusting us. Halvax opened his mouth to respond, but no words came. What could he say? The evidence was playing on screens throughout the chamber. A new report came in. Yuna read it, and her expression shifted. The Keth swarm is retreating. The chamber erupted in confused noise. The Keth never retreated. In thousands of years of recorded history, they had never abandoned a feeding ground once they began consuming it. They are pulling back from Valori Prime, Yuna continued, reading the report as it came. Long-range sensors show them regrouping at the edge of the system. They are leaving. The images confirmed her words. Keth ships were withdrawing from orbit. Ground forces were being recalled. The endless tide of consumption was reversing. Why? Someone asked. They have superior numbers. They could win if they simply continued. Yuna studied the tactical data. The answer became clear slowly, like a shape emerging from fog. They are afraid, she said. The Keth are a hive mind. Every death they suffer is felt by the entire swarm. Every loss creates pain that spreads through their collective consciousness. She looked up at the council. The humans have killed so many of them, caused so much pain, that the swarm has decided this world is not worth the cost. The implications were staggering. The Keth had never felt enough pain to retreat. No species had ever hurt them badly enough to make them run. Until now. We need to reconsider our relationship with humanity, Yuna said. The quarantine was created out of fear, but fear is not a foundation for lasting policy. The humans have shown us something today that we should have recognized long ago. What is that? Halvax asked. They are not monsters because they are violent. They are monsters because they will not stop. Not when they are outgunned, not when they are outnumbered, not when every logical calculation says they should surrender. Yuna's voice was firm. And they have chosen to use that terrible persistence to protect others. She deactivated the displays and faced the council directly. The question we must ask ourselves is simple. Do we want the humans as enemies, locked behind quarantine lines, growing stronger in isolation? Or do we want them as allies, fighting beside us against threats like the Keth? The debate that followed lasted for days. Some argued that humanity was too dangerous to ever be trusted. Others pointed to the evidence of their compassion and suggested that 300 years of isolation was enough punishment. But while the politicians talked, the soldiers acted. Admiral Yuna sent a personal message to Captain Jihye. It was not an official communication. It was not authorized by the council. It was simply one warrior speaking to another. Captain, this is Admiral Yuna of the Galactic Compact Central Fleet. I have watched what you and your people have done at Valori Prime. I have seen your courage, your sacrifice, your humanity. She paused, choosing her next words carefully. The council debates whether to maintain the quarantine. I do not know what they will decide, but I want you to know that not everyone in the galaxy sees you as monsters. Some of us see you as heroes. The response came hours later. Jihee's voice was exhausted, barely more than a whisper. Admiral, we did not come here for praise or recognition. We came because someone needed help. That is all we ever wanted, to be allowed to help. There was a long pause. Tell your council that we will return to our system when the Valori are safe. We will accept whatever punishment they decide. But we will not apologize for answering a cry for help. That is who we are. Yuna saved the message. She played it for the council 3 times. By the end of the week, the quarantine was officially suspended. The battle for Valori Prime lasted 9 days. 9 days of constant combat in space and on the ground. 9 days of fire and death and desperate heroism. 9 days that changed the galaxy forever. When the Keth finally retreated, the humans had saved 2 billion Valori. Half of the planet's population had survived. It was a victory beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen against the swarm. But victory always has a price. The Terran fleet of 12 ships was reduced to 4. The Cheongja, Daihan, Hanyul, and Byul limped in orbit around Valora Prime, their hulls torn open, their systems failing, held together by nothing more than determination and emergency repairs. 2,000 human soldiers had made planetfall. 600 survived. Captain Jie died on the 8th day. The Cheongja was surrounded by Keth cruisers. Her ship had already lost half its crew. Her engines were dying. Her weapons were nearly empty. But below her position, a convoy of civilian transports was trying to escape the planet. 500,000 Valori refugees in ships that had no weapons, no armor, no chance against the Keth. Jihee could have retreated. She could have saved herself and what remained of her crew. The battle was almost won. Someone else could protect the transports. But that was not who she was. All hands, she said over the ship's communication system. This is the captain. We are going to draw the Keth away from the civilian convoy. This will be a one-way trip. Anyone who wants to evacuate, you have 2 minutes to reach the escape pods. No one left. Captain, Tejo said from his station, weapon systems are down to 8%. We cannot win a straight fight. We do not need to win. We just need to buy time. The Cheongja accelerated toward the Keth formation. The enemy ships turned to meet her, forgetting the defenseless transports behind them. That was what Jihye wanted. For 20 minutes, the Cheongja danced through a storm of fire. Jihye pushed her dying ship to its limits, using every trick she knew, every maneuver she had practiced in a lifetime of service. The Keth could not catch her. They could not predict her movements. She was chaos given form, and they did not know how to fight chaos. But even chaos has limits. The killing blow came from a Keth carrier that had positioned itself above the battle. Its main weapon fired directly into the Cheongja's engineering section. The ship broke apart. In her final moment, Jie looked at her bridge crew. They were wounded, exhausted, dying. But they were still at their posts. They were still fighting. She smiled. It was an honor, she said. The Cheongja exploded. 300 humans died in an instant. But the civilian convoy escaped. On the surface, Sergeant Yunji received the news while defending a mountain pass against Keth ground forces. She had known Jahia for 15 years. They had served together, fought together, disagreed about everything. and respected each other completely. She did not have time to grieve. The Keth were still coming. "Push them back!" she shouted to her remaining soldiers. "We hold this pass until the evacuation is complete." They held. For 3 more hours they held. Yunji lost half her squad in that time. Good soldiers, brave soldiers, people who had families and dreams and futures that would never happen now. When the order finally came to withdraw, Unji was the last one to leave the pass. She walked backward, firing at the Keth until her weapon ran dry. Then she threw the empty rifle at them and ran. The Valori were safe. The battle was won. But sitting in the human base camp that night, surrounded by wounded soldiers and rescued refugees, Yunji felt no joy. She held a small device in her hands, scrolling through photographs. Her squad, her friends, her family. Nari found her there. The Valori archivist had continued recording throughout the battle. She had seen things that would haunt her forever. But she had also seen things that gave her hope. "May I sit?" she asked. Yunji looked up. Her eyes were red. Humans cried salt water when they grieved, Nari had learned. It seemed inefficient, but perhaps that was the point. Perhaps pain needed to flow out somehow. "Do what you want." Nari sat beside her. For a long moment, neither spoke. "I am sorry," Nari finally said. "I am sorry for what you have lost. We knew the cost when we came. Everyone who died, they knew." Yunji's voice was rough. "That does not make it easier." "No, I imagine it does not." Yunji looked at the photographs again. Faces she would never see again. Voices she would never hear. The galaxy thinks we are monsters. Maybe they are right. Maybe only monsters could do what we did. Come to a world we had never seen, fight for people we had never met, die for strangers who cannot even understand our language. She turned to face Nari directly. "But I need you to understand something. We did not come here because we wanted to fight. We came because we could not bear to do nothing. We came because somewhere in the human soul, there is something that screams when it hears others in pain. Something that cannot rest until it has tried to help, even if helping means death." Nari thought about this. She thought about her own people, who had built a civilization based on avoiding conflict. They had believed peace was the highest value. They had believed violence was always wrong. But when violence came to them, they had no answer. They could not protect themselves. They could not protect their children. They could only cry for help and hope someone answered. The humans had answered. With all their violence, all their fury, all their monstrous persistence, they had used those terrible gifts to save 2 billion lives. "What does it feel like?" Nari asked. "To be what you are?" Unji was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was soft. "It feels like standing on the edge of a cliff, knowing you could fall at any moment. It feels like carrying fire inside your chest, burning to get out. It feels like watching someone suffer and being physically unable to walk away." She looked up at the stars, visible now that the Kith ships were gone. "It feels like being alive in a way that most species will never understand." She stood and offered her hand to Nari. "Come on. There is work to do, wounded to treat, refugees to shelter. The battle is over, but the mission is not finished." Nari took her hand and stood. Together they walked back toward the camp, where humans and Valori worked side by side. The price of victory had been terrible. 8 ships destroyed, 1,400 soldiers dead, a captain who gave her life so that others could live. But 2 billion souls had been saved, and that, Yunji knew, made everything worth it. The Valori rebuilt their world slowly, carefully, with help from species across the galaxy who had watched the battle and felt ashamed of their inaction. Crystal spires rose from the ruins. Songs echoed through valleys that had once been silent with death. Children played in parks built over ground that had seen terrible violence. They never forgot what the humans did for them. In every Valori city, monuments rose to honor the Terran soldiers who died defending strangers. The names were strange to Valori tongues, but they learned to speak them anyway. Jihye, Yunji, Taiho, Hyok, Minjai, Sora, hundreds of others carved in crystal that would last for eternity. Nari became the official historian of the battle. Her recordings were translated into every language in the galaxy. Billions of beings watched the footage and saw something they had never expected. They saw monsters who chose to be heroes. The Galactic Compact's Council met many times over that year, debating what to do about humanity. The quarantine had been suspended during the emergency, but some argued it should be restored. Humanity was still dangerous. Humanity was still unpredictable. The galaxy would never be safe as long as humans walked among the stars. Admiral Una fought against this view. She testified before the Council again and again, presenting evidence that humanity's violence was not madness, but choice. They were capable of terrible destruction, yes, but they were also capable of terrible compassion, and they had proven which one they preferred. The final vote came on the anniversary of the Battle of Valori Prime. The quarantine was officially lifted. Humanity was free. But the humans surprised everyone. They did not immediately spread across the galaxy. They did not claim territory or demand power. Instead, they made a proposal that no one had expected. Ambassador Sodom presented it to the full council. He was a tall man with gray hair and kind eyes, chosen specifically because he did not look like a warrior. Humanity knew that appearances mattered. "We have lived in isolation for 300 years, Sodom said. "We accepted the quarantine because we understood your fear. We were young when we first reached the stars. We were angry and violent and dangerous. You were right to be cautious." He looked around the chamber at the delegates from 100 species. "But we are not the same people we were 3 centuries ago. We have had time to think about who we want to be. We have had time to understand our own nature and learn to control it." He paused. "We know we are monsters. We have accepted this truth, and we have decided what kind of monsters we will become." The proposal was simple. Humanity would not join the compact as a member state. They would not seek political power or territorial expansion. Instead, they would create something new, the Terran Emergency Response Coalition. Any species anywhere in the galaxy could call for human aid. No payment was required, no political obligations, no strings attached. If someone was in danger, if someone needed protection, if someone was crying for help, the humans would come. "You built your civilization on trade and politics," Sodom continued. "You measure value in resources and strategic advantage. We understand this, but we measure value differently. For us, every life matters. Every voice calling for help deserves an answer." He stepped forward, his voice growing stronger. "We offer ourselves as the galaxy's protectors, not its rulers, not its conquerors, just its protectors. When the Keth return, when new threats emerge, when peaceful species face violence they cannot fight, we will be there. We will stand between the innocent and the darkness. We will do what we were made to do." The council debated for 3 days. Some argued that this was a trap, that humanity was seeking to expand its influence under the guise of charity. Others pointed out that the humans had nothing to gain from this arrangement. They would spend their resources and lose their soldiers for people who could never repay them. In the end, the proposal passed by a narrow margin. Humanity began its new mission. The first call came from a small species on the edge of known space. Raiders were attacking their colony worlds, stealing resources and enslaving their people. They had asked the Compact for help, but their system had no strategic value. 3 human ships arrived within a week. The raiders were destroyed within days. More calls followed: a mining colony trapped by natural disaster, a refugee fleet running from religious persecution, a research station under attack by unknown forces. Each time, the humans answered. They died by the hundreds, then by the thousands. Human soldiers fell on worlds they had never heard of, protecting people they would never meet again. Their names were carved into memorials across the galaxy. Admiral Una watched this happen with a mixture of admiration and sorrow. She visited the human homeworld once, 3 years after the quarantine ended. She wanted to understand these strange beings better. Sergeant Yunji was her guide. The old soldier had retired from active duty and now trained the next generation of human warriors. She walked with a limp from an injury she had received defending a world whose name she could not pronounce. "Do your people ever regret it?" Una asked as they stood in a memorial garden filled with the names of the fallen. "Do they ever wish you had stayed behind your quarantine, safe and isolated?" Yunji thought about this for a long moment. "Some do," she admitted. "Some think we are fools for dying for strangers. Some think we should have used our strength to conquer instead of protect. She touched one of the names carved into the memorial stone. It was a soldier she had trained, dead now on a world halfway across the galaxy. But most of us understand the truth. What truth? That being human is not about safety or comfort or living forever. Being human is about what you do with the time you have. Yunji turned to face Yuna. We could have hidden behind our quarantine. We could have built walls and pretended the galaxy did not exist. But that is not who we are. She gestured at the garden, at the thousands of names carved in stone. Every name here is someone who made a choice. They chose to answer when someone cried for help. They chose to fight for people they would never know. They chose to be the monsters who protect instead of destroy. Her voice was quiet but firm. And if you asked any of them, they would tell you the same thing. They have no regrets. Yuna looked at the names. So many names. So many humans who had given everything for strangers. She thought about her own people. They had built a civilization based on logic and efficiency. They calculated value and measured outcomes. They made decisions based on what was strategic, what was practical, what made sense. The humans made decisions based on something else entirely, something that did not make sense, something that logic could not explain. They made decisions based on compassion, based on the simple belief that every life mattered, based on the idea that if someone was crying for help, the right response was to answer. Thank you, Yuna said. Thank you for showing us what we had forgotten. Yunji smiled, the expression strange and wonderful on her scarred face. We did not show you anything new. We just reminded you of something you already knew. Every species has it somewhere, buried deep. The desire to protect, the need to help, the understanding that we are all connected. She looked up at the sky, where human ships departed for distant stars. We are all monsters, Admiral. Every intelligent species has darkness inside them. The difference is what you choose to do with it. You can let it control you, make you cruel and selfish. Or you can use it, turn it into strength, make it serve something greater than yourself. The wind blew through the memorial garden, rustling the flowers that grew between the stones. The galaxy called us monsters, Yunji said. They were right. We are exactly what they said we were. But we chose what kind of monsters we would become. She raised her hand in a gesture of farewell. We chose to be the monsters who come when you cry for help. High above, the stars shone bright. Somewhere out there, someone was crying for help. And somewhere, a human ship was already on its way. The monsters of Terra would always answer. Always.